Toni. One sec. Yes. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of It Doesn't Happen Overnight. My name is Toni and I am your host. And we're here today for another episode. And I'm with my friend, Evan Floersch, who is the owner of Steak Life, which is an amazing thing. I can't wait for you guys to hear about it. I've known Evan for like over 10 years. So it's super awesome to see him grinding the past 2 years. And he is a perfect person to have on. It doesn't happen overnight. So hello, Evan. So excited for you to be here today.
Yeah, excited to be on. Thanks for having me, Toni.
Of course. Why don't you start and tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2019 from Emory University down in Atlanta. Currently, obviously we grew up together, but currently I'm in Austin, Texas doing consulting and then obviously Steak Life.
And why don't you tell, because I know what it is, but why don't you tell the listener/viewer what Steak Life is?
Yeah, so Steak Life is we call ourselves the modern man's brand, right? We're kind of the Esquire. We're trying to do a little something different, but obviously it's good to associate with past brands. But so what we kind of associate with is kind of, or what we say is, we're the Esquire for millennials and Gen Z. Younger men. What we do is very general. We're a generalist in a very specialized men's lifestyle industry. So rather than, I worked 40 years to be an expert in X, Y, and Z. And because of that, you should listen to me and buy my book or buy my product. We're kind of taking the approach that, hey, we're young men ourselves, and we feel like the formula for masculinity that we've been subscribing to in the past, and past generations have been subscribing to, is super dangerous and super damaging to society and men in general. And so we provide content and support and products to basically help men become better versions of themselves through this different formula of masculinity, which is steak, strength, talent, ego, appearance, and knowledge. So those are the 5 verticals we create media under.
How did you come up with this idea? Like what inspired you to start this?
Yeah, so, obviously summer of 2018 is when it really started. I would say we're a lot different of a brand right now than we were in summer 2018. Despite doing well in school and sports and whatnot, I always grew up super insecure, and that even went into college. And so the summer of 2018, where I was at, a really tough point and at an internship, I just didn't feel like there was any sort of meaning around, the path I was currently on. And so when I looked for any sort of content and media and whatnot to kind of help me understand what my career path was and what it means to be a real man entering adulthood, I just couldn't find anything out there, and didn't feel like, Men's Health or Esquire or GQ or whatever really filled that void for me. So at that internship, on lunch breaks while I was eating like Pot-Belly sandwiches and kind of avoiding work that I needed to do, I was, building designs, writing, recruiting, even like on the call with some people at like my cubicle, like, hey, I think you should join the team and whatnot. And it was really just a platform at that time to voice my own opinion of what it means to be a man and what kind of advice I would give to men who were, in a similar position than me. Obviously, where I was at, I wasn't at the best point mentally and physically and whatnot in my life. And obviously with my inexperience, I think you can kind of imagine that year one was not going to go well, despite, having a great website, despite having a great group of guys, a great team, and some investment as well. It just didn't take off. Really, we came off as very like barstooly, very kind of boys clubby. And no one really took us seriously. I always took it seriously, but I didn't really take myself and the way I was embodying the brand seriously. And the moment I did, I would say, is kind of the turning point of, when things started to look up.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so cool because like, one, you were seeking something, like you were looking for something. And when you couldn't find it, instead of stopping your search, you're like, okay, well then this is something that I can, like, this is a niche that needs to be filled because you're not the only millennial man who's who's searching for some guidance. Like, and I feel like there's a lot of support for women and kind of becoming a modern woman and really growing into yourself and getting that confidence. And I feel like because we like look at men in usually a more privileged group, a lot of times we don't focus on just the general well-being of just like humans. And I totally agree with you. When you're not in a right place yourself, it's really hard to take care of yourself. It's really hard to take yourself seriously. And if you're not even taking yourself seriously, like good luck. Like, you know what I mean? Like the chances of viewers, investors, anyone looking at you, regardless of inexperience, like everyone starts out inexperienced, which is kind of why I wanted to start this podcast, because you can't just go off on the bat and be amazing. So it's okay to be inexperienced, but you gotta believe in yourself, or else you're fighting way more uphill battles than just launching something, which is already in itself a huge uphill battle. So I think that's like so cool that you saw a gap when you were searching for it in yourself, and instead of stopping your search or supplementing it with something that didn't feel like it really fit your needs, you're like, okay, let's fill a need. And it helped you and it helps others, which is just perfect.
Yeah, I feel like that's always the thing that's missing, right? What is it about an experience that makes it seem like a waste of time? And it really is, there really is no such thing. It's really that the missing part is that self-belief. Because obviously in my scenario, like you said, there is a void, right? This issue of, subscribing to this traditional formula for masculinity is super dangerous and it needs to be solved. And we feel that it needs to be solved in a very urgent manner. We had the platform and whatnot. And the missing part is that self-belief. And so when you start getting those obstacles, when you start getting the criticism that, people that do something different often get, and you don't have the self-belief, that really is when you can kind of get in your own head and really, question, hey, is this really worth my time? Or, hey, what have I been doing? And that's when people, I feel like, end something they really care about prematurely, is when they don't have that self-belief and they don't really take a step back and really, evaluate everything they've learned and everything they can do and the people they can impact, if they just believe in themselves.
Well, yeah, because if you believe in yourself, then you look at every criticism or every day, regardless of if your best work was done or not. It's like, yeah, but even if I was only able to do 10 minutes of work today, that's 10 minutes more work than I was before I started. And I'm just that much more further to this goal and whatever. So I feel like that is such a good way to see it, because when you believe in yourself, nothing is really a setback. Like you either like learn, which is the word I'm looking for isn't priceless, but you either learn, which is a lesson in itself, or you get one step closer, like you actually achieved it, and therefore like boom, what's the next thing? So I feel like I have learned so much just even this past 2 months. And if I go back a year, exactly a year ago is when I first launched my first like talk show or whatever. When I look back now, I'm like, oh my God, the editing, the sound, like it's all so rough. But if I hadn't done that, no way I'd be here right now, because I learned so much then. I'm learning so much every single day that I'm doing this. So even the bad things, even the things that don't work out or I have to do again or whatever, I'm like, awesome, a lesson. I know what not to do next time. So therefore, even though I wasted time today, I've saved time every other point in the future with this new learning that I have. So
100%.
that's really, really, really cool. Can you give me a little more info about Stake Life, like kind of flush it out for the people listening? Because I know you guys have a lot of different like branches of it, and I know you have different guys working on different stuff for content. So can you just give me like a little more insight into what Stake is?
Where it's at right now, we're a team of 6 guys. What I would say our approach and our strategy is, hey, we're at point A right now. We understand obviously our strengths and our weaknesses as a team, but we have this brand and we have this void to fill. And we have our own kind of individual journeys and personal brands we want to build. How do we get to point B, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's where I right now. Obviously, we're going to look to scale. We're going to look to build a team. But what we're focusing on right now is what content is working, what messages are working, and how can we whether it's getting a certification to become a personal trainer, really diving in and like some sort of course to, learn more about mental wellness and whatnot. And how can we really become sponges right now while we're so young and obviously have a very experiential approach to life so that we can tell these stories and really relate to our followers, at least where we're at right now. Right. So more about steak. Obviously, we have the 5 verticals, right? So if you go to our website or you go to any sort of content or any sort of media channel that we have a website, social media, and then we're coming out with podcasts in the coming months. If you go to those different channels, you can get content on strength, which is fitness, nutrition, and then mental strength. Talent, how do you develop your talents, whether it's your creative talents, analytical skills, physical talents, even for any sort of athletes that are out there. We get into E, which is mastering your ego and how you perceive yourself. And that vertical, all the content within it talks about relationships, self-development, self-care, mindfulness, and then appearance. The A, we have 3 subcategories where it's featured products that are both sustainable and ethical. We obviously have that kind of mission to promote and highlight sustainable and ethical brands as part of our mission as a brand. So we do featured products and feature really cool products that are, also great for the environment and run by really great people. And then style guides, so improving your style, and then personal grooming and hygiene. Knowledge is our media, what's really worth consuming right now and worth your time. We give any sort of media recommendations on that. Self-education, sort of life hacks. The last thing under knowledge is quotes and any sort of really meaningful books and whatnot that you can read to expand your knowledge. So
I feel like that's so cool because I don't know many platforms doing that in general, like that all encompassing and so clearly outlined. Like I feel like it's so nice. Like you have this word steak and you're like that, you know what I mean? Like that could take on so many different connotations. But it's like, no, like break it down. It's super organized and each pillar targets a different part of kind of that overall, like, for lack of a better word, homeostasis of just feeling well, both in your body, but your mind, and like feel like you're learning, but also developing like your own talent. Because we all have these skills. And like you said, it's the everyday use of those skills that makes you faster, that makes you sharper, that gives you the shortcuts, that lets you know when you can't take a shortcut and there's only this way through. And I just feel like that's so cool. And then also having a target audience, but like we've talked about before, anyone would benefit from that advice. Like, like me being a girl, regardless, would love to look at nutrition stuff. And I have looked at your guys' stuff and been like, oh, that's super useful. So I love that you have your target audience because there's like you said, a niche that you need to fill. So it's good to target, but your content and your approach and just the general like topics being covered still are so universal and anyone can, like everyone needs steak, which is funny because you said that one of your pillars is sustainability. And it's like, okay, no, not actually, because red meat's bad. But like, I feel like everyone could develop their steak, which I think is really cool. And as far as brand goes, like solid brand, because branding is half the battle in this age of chaotic social media. So I know that you have like your actual job as a digital marketer, but I also know that you work a substantial amount of time on this, which makes sense because as you've explained everything that you do, it'd be hard to get this done without working a substantial amount on it. So can you kind of go into like what your average week looks like?
Sure.
And you can go into both like your actual job, but also like what you've crafted as a schedule for yourself to make sure that all of this stuff gets done.
As you know, I started this, 2 years ago, almost now coming up in, the first week of June. Right off the bat, I knew I just needed more experience and to learn from more people in the digital marketing space. So super fortunate that, and I love what I'm doing as my my consulting job, because it's all helping our clients, build their digital footprint. So fortunate that it translates really well to the skills I need to grow Steak Life. But yeah, I would say I probably spend 50 hours of that doing consulting work on during the week, and then probably like 60 to 70 hours in the other time. And then training for races and whatnot. So definitely not very relatable to the young, active individual out there, very social individuals out there. I really don't go out much and whatnot, but it works for me. Obviously I find a ton of meaning in both jobs. And so, being, bogged down in work, it's really enjoyable for me. And obviously getting my physical fitness in through my race training as well is super great. But breaking down on a weekly basis, I spend the majority of my time and put in the majority of the 50 hours on my consulting work Monday through Wednesday. So that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I can be completely committed to communicating with the team, to creating content, to shooting fitness videos, whatever the case may be, getting on podcasts. And so, yeah, so give you a little plug there. So that's kind of how it looks from a day-to-day standpoint. And then what I found super effective that, other people might as well is I bucket my days. So on Mondays, I know for a fact I'm going to, learn after work on how to be a better marketer, right? And then on Tuesdays are really the days where I create social media content, right? And then on Wednesdays, I'm writing. And then on Thursdays, because I'm done Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with consulting work, those are the days when the guys on the team are drafting their drafts for new articles. And so on Thursdays, I sit down and edit. So we have a great system internally now of when, the things we need to get done in our everyday lives are done, we are now, fully invested in Steak Life. And it's been a great balance with the team, and the guys are really working hard to really impact other men. So, and then, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they each have their own kind of purposes. And when you have these very, I wouldn't say ambiguous, but definitely broader, very ambitious goals for yourself in a quarter and a year, looking at your weeks from a bucketing standpoint and making sure you're not just going all in on one bucket, like creating social media, is really beneficial, because then obviously your other buckets, like becoming a better marketer, becoming, a better writer for me, those kind of end up lacking in the end if you go all in on one, focus. So
like a lot of things you said there resonated with me, because I'll start with the thing you just ended on with the bucketing towards larger goals, because it's great to have those. Okay, like for example, for YouTube, before you can monetize, you need 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of watch time. So I have those numbers like in my head. Like that's my first benchmark. Like cool, like you're on the track to doing things right. But that's like the farther goal. How do I break that down into every single day doing stuff to get to that goal? And it's like, okay, I should be making 2 to 3 videos a week if I want a lot of content for a lot of people to watch, to increase that watch time before I have a big viewership. You just put out a lot of videos. So now I know, instead of like looking at that larger goal, I don't know when I'm going to get there, but I know what I can do every single week to be increasing towards that goal. So I feel like that's super, like such great advice is like, okay, like set your goals for the quarter, the month, or whatever. But then you got to then go back and do it for the week, and then do it by the day if you're really making sure that you don't, like you said, leave anything out, and especially developing the things that you're already really good at, and also developing the things that you need work on. And I think also, like you said, you're working so much and it may not be relatable, but I think there's something that I talked about or was planning to talk about on one of my videos is I feel like burnout comes when you are doing a job that you, or like a passion or whatever that you don't enjoy. Like, because then you feel like you're putting hours towards something that really doesn't matter to you, either in the long run, in the short term, like whatever it is, it feels like a waste of your time and you're putting hours to it. That's how I felt at many of my internships in the past. But now at this point, I'm working most days all day. From when I get up, there's like some email or some social media post or some whatever, someone to connect to ask to come on a next show. Like there's always something I can be doing, and I'm never tired. Like I'm like, I could really, like I have to stop myself from working most days and be like, hey, it's 3, you should really go to bed. Like, because it fuels me. Like everything I do, everything that gets me one step closer to those larger goals invigorates this like fire, or like just like incites this like internal drive in me. And I don't even really add up the hours that I'm doing because it's mostly on my own time. But I totally agree. Like it doesn't happen overnight, because every single day, if you're not putting a substantial amount of time into it, it's probably not going to get to where you want it to in maybe the time frame that you want it to, unless something goes viral or like whatever. I don't really know. But everything you said was really relatable to me, someone who's also trying to start something big and bigger than myself. And that's kind of what the target listener for this podcast is like, yeah, just so you know, like to start something like Steak, like if there's an idea you have and it mirrors the type of platform that you're doing, Evan, like it's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to take a team, and it's going to take XYZ. But if they know that going in, then when it's happening, they feel more prepared. And that's kind of what I wanted for this podcast, is to prepare people for the, hey, this isn't going to be that relatable to the average person, but you're not trying to be the average person, and neither am I. And neither is hopefully the people listening to this right now. So I really enjoy hearing how much work goes into it, because I see the output, and I know that doesn't just magically appear every day. So it's super cool to hear kind of what really goes into that.
Yeah, and you do the math, and I know I can't take credit for this kind of idea. It's actually, I listened to a Kobe Bryant interview, and he was talking about his training his daughter in basketball, and how he often got criticism for how intense he was. But he told the team of young women playing basketball with his daughter, hey, if we're gonna work and become the best team we can be, then we need to train every single day, and just do the math, right? If you're putting in 30 minutes every single day, but someone is putting in an hour on the weekends when it's convenient, you're going to become a better player over the course of the year than that person who just does it when they're interested or when it's convenient, right? You have to be fully committed. And when you're committed, and when I'm not going to say that by following Steak Life and, sitting down once a week and reading Steak Life, your life is going to greatly change, right? No, but if you listen to the content and the messages we're kind of sharing, and you become 1% better every single day, that kind of exponential growth is so much stronger than just becoming a better version of yourself, or really investing in yourself and doing something you care about when it's convenient, or when you're kind of interested.
I literally, like, I don't know if you've seen this video. It's the video I made for my birthday, but I haven't seen that interview, but it was all about that, because when Kobe passed away, like I didn't know much about him as a basketball player or anything, because I don't follow basketball, but I just started like looking at what he was doing in his second act. And obviously his basketball feats are just so amazing. And I realized the same exact thing. Like I was like, you can't get anything done if you only go on the days when it's easy. Like you will never reach your fitness goals if you only go on the days when you really want to work out. Cause like probably like 3 times a week, I actually like would rather work out than do something else. And there's probably like 3 other days a week when I'm like, I'm really not feeling it. If you're not going on the days and you're not feeling it, then you don't actually want it. Like, I mean, like I realize it's the days that it's hard to go. It's the days that you don't want to record. It's the days that you just feel like you're not doing something. If you do the thing on that day, then there's like literally no way your dreams can't come true, because that means every single time it's hard, you still went for it. That means when it's easy, you're going for it. So like you bridge the gap. And I saw that in my own, even just physical training. I started going boxing just almost every day, because I was like, you just got to go. I don't care if you wake up tired, just go. And then when I was there, I was like, and also when you're there, be present for the whole hour. Like do every rep you're told, go until the bell, like just really like go for it, and then see what happens. And if you still aren't able to like become a fitter version of yourself, if you still like whatever, then we'll look at something else. I've tried things. I've tried to work out. I've tried to start content stuff, but I've never committed. And that was the big difference for me. It was like, we all try a bunch of things every day, but I've never committed and saying, I'm sticking this out. When I did, that's when all the results come. So I super agree with that mentality, and kind of leads me to my next question, or maybe just like topic, because I know that like mentality is kind of everything, because we often count ourselves out in here before like we actually can't do that last push-up or actually can't do that next thing. So I know that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I know that you guys have been putting out a lot of content for that. So I wanted to know if you want to speak about what that means for you and how incorporating that into Stake has been beneficial for both like you and your team and also the men that you're trying to reach.
Yeah, so mental health awareness, obviously something we cover, something that men traditionally have really struggled with, right, is speaking up about their mental health issues. But yeah, mental health, May is all about building awareness for mental illness. So when we talk about the mentality side of things, we really talk about, mental wellness and how you remain focused and remain committed, as we were just talking about. Yeah, when we talk about mental wellness, one of the biggest messages we have at Stake Life is really not subscribing to this, what we call, hustle porn is what they call it, right? Where it's 24/7. And we were just talking about this, right? You need some sort of monomaniacal focus and commitment to do great things without a doubt. But you also have to find time for self-care, right? And you also have to find time to recharge and refuel. And that's something that, in the past, whether you're an entrepreneur or an athlete, you were told, hey, we have to work hard every single day. Like we were just talking about, that focus is so critical, but you have to listen to yourself. You have to listen to your mind. You have to listen to your body. And when it's telling you, look, I really can't go further, there's sometimes when maybe that is in your head, but oftentimes you need to listen to that and really prioritize self-care. Yeah, I think, self-care is very dynamic. We kind of look at it as different plants need different amounts of water and different kind of care. We really have to look at that with the same kind of approach to self-care in humans, right? Different people are going to require, different amounts of self-care, and we have to be compassionate for that. And that's really the message we share around mental wellness. Yeah, I think obviously it's something that's super important, super close to me, and because I have a very hard work ethic, I have to always listen to my body. If I'm not, then I have obviously people in my corner telling me when to shut down and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's super important. May, being at home with coronavirus, it's even that much more important. Something we've been talking about at Stake Life in the past few weeks or a couple months here, this idea that it's so important right now to throw curveballs at yourself. This kind of comes from, which was surprising to me, but this idea that, our brains are kind of wired for uncertainty, right? It's actually natural for us to wake up and have no idea what the day is going to bring or what the day ahead of us is going to look like, right? What it's going to be like at work or in a normal life. But with coronavirus and the kind of limitations we have in May and in recent months, what's kind of made people crawl up walls is the fact that everything is so certain, right? You roll out of bed, you open your laptop, you start work, you close your laptop when you're finished with work, and you eat dinner, watch Netflix, go to bed, right? And that it's the same kind of cycle over and over for so many people. And so what the message that we found super powerful and is really resonated with our audience is just to throw curveballs at yourself, whether that's taking a new route running, turning the shower nozzle super cold so that your body kind of gets that shock, reading a new book, just exploring, even like daydreaming and doing something different, just allotting an hour of white space in your time to do whatever you need to do simultaneously and spontaneously, do it, because your mind and your body need that kind of mix up. And they need that kind of shock that, it's not the same routine over and over and over again, because that's what really drives people up the walls, is this idea that tomorrow is going to look a lot like today because today looked a lot like yesterday, right? So
there's so many things there that I could comment on. I think the first one I will comment on is what you said about, we talked about you really need to work even on the days that you think you don't want to. And in that same video or even clip, like I said, and that way, when I actually needed a break, I knew that I actually needed it, because I knew that I wouldn't just slack off just because I wasn't feeling it. Like I had already eliminated that laziness from me. So the days when I woke up and I'm like, oh, I actually like should not work out today. My body's tired. I think if I worked out today, I would just overdo it. I know that I'm not making excuses. Like I'm actually just listening to myself. And therefore I started to trust myself more, and I started to give myself the leeway to take a break, because I knew that when I was ready, either mentally, physically, whatever, I would be right back on that saddle. Like even last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, I had a bunch of technical issues with this one project that was really important to me, this particular video that I've like kind of kept safe for almost a year now so I could put it out at the right time, and all these files deleted at like the last moment. And I saw myself shutting down, and I was like, you know what, Toni, you're not allowed to touch a video until Saturday. You can't edit for 3 days. Like I had to force myself away from this project because I was too close to it and it hurt too much when all these things started happening. But I was like, your head is in a wrong place because this is really important to you. So if you're thinking about giving up, that means you need to take some time somewhere else and recalibrate where you feel about this. And then like by Saturday when I was back, I was like, all right, let's figure this. And I was just so much more focused, so much more determined. But if I hadn't taken that break and listened to me as I was losing it, like I was objectively losing it, then it just would have been detrimental. So I just love that you said, like, yeah, you got to work hard, but if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not listening to yourself, if you haven't found your inner voice yet, like the inner voice that lets you know what's really going on, it's going to be really tough to make these things happen because you can't sacrifice your well-being for a further goal. Like if you're not going to be there at the end anyway, once this thing gets to the place you want it to be because you didn't take care of yourself, then you're never going to be able to enjoy what you build. So I really love that. And just what you were saying about throwing curveballs, and I feel like that's super important. What I've seen, the biggest difference between how people are handling this pandemic is if there is something worth waking up for and like doing the day for, like having something important to you or doing things different in your day in a really monotonous umbrella of a lot of limitations for a good reason, but it's really just trying to just get things going again. So I think that's super great advice. So Evan, I feel like you've been doing it for 2 years and you just had a multitude of experiences. And like you mentioned earlier, you have the first year is really hard, etc. But I also have seen just such great milestones and stuff from you guys and just how you guys have kind of came into your brand. So what for you would you say is one of the things you're most proud of, or like one of the highlights for you of just kind of being a part and kind of leading this whole experience?
Yeah, so there's definitely a couple things. I'll get to the most important one at the end. But the first one, obviously, and the reason we do it is every new follower we get, it's so kind of rewarding to know that we're, impacting one more person, whether it's one people on some days or 10 new followers and whatnot. That's been super rewarding. I feel like it'd be pretty cliche for me to just end it at that. So one thing that's unique, but still so rewarding during these last 2 years of ups and downs and whatnot, beyond just the nature of leading a team and watching those guys become better versions of themselves and become, better creators, better marketers, and just better men in general, as I said. But the most important one that is so relevant to this podcast, looking back and kind of seeing, despite, as we talked about earlier in the podcast, despite all of the setbacks and obstacles that, I primarily laid out for myself, I guess, but ones that were also laid out in front of me. And despite all those, overcoming those and looking back, and spending some days even today, looking back and just being super proud and kind of turn it in the sense of, okay, we did this, we've come this far, that it's just that much more exciting to think about what we can do, and spending the time looking back and seeing what you accomplish even within 2 years, the people you can impact, the messages you receive and whatnot, just looking back and seeing, how far we've come since, being this, blog talking about not wearing khakis, I think was one of our first articles, is something that is really, gratifying for me, and something I often, I'll never shy away from, looking back and being proud of where we started and where we're at today.
I feel like something we talked about when we were talking before this podcast was what you said is, look how far we got with knowing nothing. Look how
Exactly.
far we got when we started and we knew nothing. And it's like, now you know things and you're still learning things. Like you said, like you never stop getting your certifications, like taking more classes, like expanding your own knowledge so you have more at your disposal to provide to your audience. But I think if that's not the core message of this podcast, I don't know what is. It's like, when you know nothing and you still get this far, imagine what you can do when you start knowing a couple somethings and then a lot of somethings. And then soon enough, people are coming to you asking you, how do I start my own steak? And you're like, medium rare. Yeah, I'm kidding. Sorry. Awful joke.
Straight out of left field.
But awful joke, but I think that's great. And I think that it embodies everything that I'm trying to get across here. So I super love that. Last questions I have for you before we go into our lightning round is, what advice would you have for someone at the very general level wanting to start something? And to get a little bit more specific, like wanting to start something big. And steak is big, and it's a thing, it's a platform that takes a lot of time to curate and to promote. So I kind of want to know, like, if someone is trying to do something similar or even in their own vein, but it's going to be an investment of time, resources, energy, like what would your advice be for that?
Yeah, I think we touched on self-belief obviously earlier in the podcast, but I would start with that. I would start with anyone who wants to do something special. And just to be clear, we have no problem with, obviously, your target audience in this podcast and they're high achievers and go-getters and whatnot, but we have no problem. And I don't think anyone should have a problem with the people that want a very simple life, very minimal life. That's completely fine. So we're never going to impose this kind of message of, going out and impacting, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. Some people just, want to live simply, and that's completely okay. But the message I would tell someone that came to me and is true and is clearly a go-getter and cares and finds meaning in what they want to, start is waking up with this mindset every single day, waking up with this mindset. Tomorrow can be better, and I have the power to make it so. And I have the power to change, impact people's lives. And that kind of self-belief, as we talked about earlier on the podcast, starting from within rather than seeing what other people are doing and seeing how you can fit in this society is so important and should be step one. And then something a little more tangible for your audience. So someone in a position that wants to start a brand that's young and very committed, obviously has that self-belief factor already. I would say this. I would say, 1, be patient. 2, obviously look at it from a long-term commitment standpoint. And that's why I started with patience, because what you need to do is every single day until you feel like you can, or whether you're selling it or you're passing it off to someone or, ending it for whatever reason, or, just continually going on your path. What you need to do every single day to be kind of successful, but also very, fulfilled, is learn, take action, and connect with someone. If you learn every single day and build the skills that you need to succeed in the industry you're going in every single day, if you do something to take action towards whatever goal you have every single day, and you connect with one person, whether it's your team or some expert in the industry or just someone in general, every single day, you'll be so surprised, maybe not in year one, but you'll be so surprised. And obviously this is a hope of mine right now, but you'll be so surprised at what you can achieve in 5-10 years. If you learn, you do, and you connect with someone in your industry, someone who you respect, and do things that you feel valuable with your time every single day.
I mean, I feel like I could say something, but I feel like he just said it best, because like in various different either videos or other stuff that I've done, I feel like I've echoed many of those same sentiments. And I feel like your ability to articulate exactly that. You can't go backwards if you go forward every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's just impossible. Like, I've never taken a physics class, but I know this. Even if it's one step, even if you only make it to the next sidewalk block, that is still progression. And I think we need to stop looking, like you said, external. I think it's so hard on social media when you can see the people who are 5 years down the line and you maybe didn't see all 5 years of work, but you're like, I want to be there and I'm not there. So you think it's not enough. And you're like, no, because even if you only gain one follower every day, after 1,000 days, that's 1,000 followers. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's 1,000 days. That's a long time, but and then you figure out ways to progress that. And you're like, okay, well, how do I get 2 followers a day? Because then it's only 500 days. Okay, how do I get 3? Oh, I have to market. Okay, you know what I mean? So it's like you get faster, but you got to be okay with starting with the 1 and even sometimes 0 and even sometimes -1 because you fucked up and you're like, what? We don't care about khakis. Like, you kind of need those negative setbacks until you start getting in your positive just progression. But if you don't start somewhere, you'll never get there. And I think it doesn't happen overnight is just embodies all of that. And I think you embody all of that and are so good at speaking about both your experience, but also just how it relates to really just going for it and not being afraid of the no's and the failures and taking each one as a step towards progress. So I love that. I think that's amazing. I'm excited to get to our lightning round questions, the finale of
Scared about this
podcast. Yeah. Okay. Are you good at handling spicy food?
in my mind. Yes, but no, like it's way too
What does in your
overconfident.
mind mean?
I'm way too overconfident with my approach to spicy food, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
So you're always like, oh yeah, I'll take this level spicy, and then as you're eating it, you're like, I fucked up. Like I should have gone 1 down.
Yeah, even like my ego kicks in if someone orders something spicy and I'll order something spicier. That's just how I am. Just immediately regret it.
You should do a steak segment under ego and be like, yo, if someone's spicing it a little higher than you, like, don't.
Learn from me.
Which armrest is whose on an airplane?
Very standard, very straightforward. Surprising that people still don't respect it. But the window person gets the window, middle gets both in the middle, and then the guy in the aisle gets the aisle, obviously armchair. Middle, if you're sitting in middle in an airplane in today's airplanes, I don't know about the future ones that are supposed to be a lot more spacious, but you gotta have some empathy for that guy or woman and give them both armchairs or armrests.
I 100% agree. It's just how it goes. It shouldn't really be a discussion. Like I feel like we all know the proper etiquette. All right, last question. I don't want this to be controversial, but I think you may have a hard time answering this. Should vegans eat animal crackers?
We didn't go to the so for anyone listening, the founder of Steak Life is temporarily a vegan for research purposes. And and wow, that is an interesting question. The pragmatist in me thinks yes, they're allowed to. But blindfolded, maybe we can compromise. Like maybe blindfolded, but they can eat them. I don't know. The essence of looking at an animal, whether it's an animal cracker, an actual animal, and eating it is tough. Especially for a vegan. So not to trigger any vegans out there. But yeah, I would say yes with a blindfold on.
That's super fair. I think I had similar thoughts about that too. And I don't mean to put you on the spot like that. I don't mean to be controversial. I'm not here to bring politics into this, but I thought that it was important to hear an opinion from someone who was recently vegan, also owner of Steak Life. I mean, I think that perspective on this question was just too hard to pass up. So I appreciate your honesty and I appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable there because that was tough. Evan, thank you so much for so many things. For the viewers listening, we had technical difficulties and Evan has just been amazing in just making sure that we both felt super great about what we were able to deliver to you guys as far as content. And this personally has been one of my favorite It Doesn't Happen Overnights to do. So I'm super honored to have known you for so long and to see you doing something so amazing, investing your time, focusing your time, and doing your part in the larger game of impacting lives. Because I know you said earlier, like, it's okay if you don't have that larger goal. But when you do, like, you got to start figuring out ways to manifest that to both feed your internal purpose and to help the people that you want to help, the people like you. And I think that's just so inspirational. So thank you so much for being on this podcast. I can't wait to have you back in the future as we go through more of your milestones, because I know you are just on your way there. And I know the viewers are going to love to hear this. So thank you so much, Evan.
Yep. Thanks, Toni. Thanks for having me.
Of course. We'll see you later, viewers watching on YouTube and listening on your podcast preferred app. Tune in next week for another episode with another guest. And make sure to tune into Toni on Tap all week for more content. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Nailed it.